for Kenyans, they have seen the ICC as the only option. They have not seen any movement at the national level that could give them some hope that if the ICC's cases were not to be confirmed, that justice would still be done. So I think it will lead to a lot of disappointment, especially on the part of victims who are really relying on the ICC process to come up with some solution, some remedy. It will not be individualized solutions, but I think the idea mostly is that people want to see people being held accountable. So I think that will be greatly disappointing to a number of people. I think the problem will be that Kenyans may not understand that the ICC process is complementary, that ultimately it is for us as Kenyans to look for solutions. But because of the way the cases have gone and the hope that Kenyans have had in the process, they will not really distinguish between the fact that the ICC is an international process and that at the national level we should also have our own processes. They will just see it as another confirmation that nothing ever works in this country. Now nobody will ever be held to account. So I think that will create a lot of apathy for Kenyans in the justice system and even at the international level. Personally, I hope and I believe that Kenyans are not going to be violent, at least to the scales that we saw in 2008. And this, for me, is because I think Kenyans have learned that, yes, you can engage in violence, but at the end of the day, what do you as a person gain from the violence, from participating in it, or even from, creating victims of electoral violence? Because if we look at the post-election violence that happened, the victims have never gotten redress. The perpetrators themselves, some of them, especially at the lower levels, they have not really gained anything from the result of their violence, in my view, because a lot of Kenyans are still in the place where they were. They have not seen a lot of economic development. Some of them are still very disappointed with the processes that are taking place. So for me, I think that if Kenyans were to ask themselves, what is the value that violence would add to your life at the individual level, at the community level, at the national level, that if we thought seriously about it, it does not add value. It does not matter who sits in State House if we do not have accountability mechanisms. So whether it is somebody from your tribe, whether it is somebody you did not vote for, the important thing is, do we have mechanisms to be able to hold whoever sits in State House accountable so that development is done for all citizens? And that, for me, I think is what Kenyans really should be looking at, as opposed to asking themselves, is it my tribesman, is it my friend, is it my crony who is going to be the president? We should be looking at the mechanisms that exist for making them do the things that will make all of us progress, not just a portion of Kenyans.
The court is established. If you look at the Rome Statute, one of the motivations for establishing it was that the international community wanted to have a court that would deal with the question of impunity, that where serious crimes, international crimes are committed, we should have a ready mechanism to respond. And of course, when you're dealing with impunity, the reverse of that is that you're doing justice for victims. And in this country, civil society has argued, and perhaps they are right, that the ICC perhaps is the only serious option for victims in terms of prosecution. And I want to limit it to prosecution, because some people try to overplay it in terms of reparations. It's very limited in terms of reparation. Because there are no other prosecutions at the national level, if the ICC charges are thrown out, it means that victims, or at least those who are linked to the charges that were brought by the prosecutor, will have lost out. So I think it has a serious impact in terms of access to justice for victims. But I think broadly, in terms of the question of impunity, but you can also take the view that the mere fact that the ICC acted in Kenya has actually impacted political behavior. It doesn't matter whether anyone is convicted, tried in the end, But the fact that there is an international court that can act if these things happen, I think is deterrent. I cannot be certain about this because the small guys who actually did the things for which these 6 are being charged are not in court. So they have not felt the pinch that the 6 may have felt. So the question is whether the message that the ICC can prosecute has penetrated to the small guys. So I'm questioning also the idea that the ICC can actually be deterrent because of the limits, because of the number of people it prosecutes. It can deter political behavior at the highest levels, but what about the small guys?